Welcome to the Carnivore fan fiction. This is Carnivore 2.0 Shit, Chapter 1. Reality Bites! The Tyrannosaur floated for a very long time. The ice floe it sat on was getting smaller, thanks to the warmer air from the Arctic summer rains. The creature had concluded that the cold substance under its massive taloned feet would lose its original size the more the air felt different and comfortable around it. He chuffed into the twilight. The two little figures were long gone, the one who hatched him and the other one who tried to blow him up. That was the one who was always near the hatching one. The Tyrannosaur let out a low, rumbling roar of annoyance. If he ever saw that one again who took his hatcher, he would eat him. The massive saurian stomach talked back to the dinosaur. He had already digested the rest of those pesky little things from Deep Core Station. Not that the great beast knew all of those details, but he knew enough. It felt empty, much like his unstoppable, ravenous stomach, but much deeper and sharper. It came when the T-Rex recalled the little hatcher female, the one he knew as the one who gave him life, Kelly. When the beast tried to imitate the sound of her name, it came out as a trail of roars. The Tyrannosaur also remembered the other sounds the tiny beings made. It came from their microscopic maws. But some of the noises repeated when the little creatures reappeared. The one who hatched them was Kelly. It seemed her mate was the sound called Troy. The Tyrannosaur grumbled. His hatcher was always around the tiny Troy being. It seemed that it meant the hatcher chose to be around him more than wanting to eat him, like the Tyrannosaur had felt for the hatcher Kelly. The beast understood eating the tiny Troy could make Kelly Hatcher create water from the tiny dots she used for vision, which made the Tyrannosaur feel different. The beast's insides felt that uncomfortable feeling again, visualizing the minuscule female who hatched him. The floe continued its journey through the Arctic Sea, being blown by the katabatic winds into the unknown. Kelly woke up with a start. Her blonde hair fell in her face as she tried to see her surroundings. The room was dark as her eyes adjusted to the low light. Her hand went to her chest, her heart beating. A movement stirred beside her. She turned towards it, scared at first, gasped, and then let out a relieved breath. "Wolf!" she whispered at the fluffy shape on the bed. Kelly's eyes were focusing better now. The half-husky, half-timber-wolf licked his chops, and stuck his head under her hand. It was a demand more than a request. Kelly laughed quietly as she gave Wolf lots of head scritches. Another movement stopped Kelly and Wolf. This one moved sharply, roughly. Wolf whined at the figure under the covers twist and turn. Kelly reached out and placed her hand on it, and after a moment, the movement calmed. "Troy can't stop the nightmares," Kelly said to Wolf. "Mine have a bit. I know you still have them, buddy." She ruffled his fur lightly. His tail wagged slightly, and then the husky's ears flattened as they listened to Troy cry out in his sleep. Time had passed since those horrible days from Deep Core Station, but not the endless trauma that they had carried. Since the rescue from the massacre of Deep Core Station, Troy and Kelly and the poor little wolf all suffered from horrible dreams and flashbacks from the expedition gone wrong. Kelly remembered the debriefing and how she and Troy told them and the government officials what had happened. So Tarosh and his men went rogue. A man sitting behind a long desk alongside other important-looking people spoke to Kelly. She had tried to even her breathing out as the carefully picked words came out about what she and Troy discussed about what occurred at Deep Core. "Yes," Kelly had said. "And you believe Tarosh's break with reality was due to the high levels of radioactive material he was exposed to while polluting the Antarctic?" One of the American government agents asked her. The agent eyed the representative from Russia, who gave him a sharp look back. "Yes, I do, as well as his men," Kelly said. She and Troy testified. The other men died from either Tarosh killing them or dying from the stark and lifeless cold of the Antarctic. What happened to the other members of your team, such as Jack Rains and Burke? An older woman from one of the government agencies asked. Troy calmly stated that the elements were too harsh for some of them and that they weren't equipped to deal with the conditions. As he spoke the words, he felt the lump of regret stick in his throat as he remembered the geology intern, Don Bradshaw's mauled body, and Jack Rains limping around on his amputated leg only to be murdered by Tarosh. He looked the government agent in the eyes and told them how Tarosh lost his mind, blew up the buildings, some with the men still inside. Troy had no problem lying or throwing Valentine Tarosh, his legacy, under the bus, not if it meant keeping Kelly safe. The majority of the people had believed them, especially seeing the condition of Sawyer and Darrow and Wolf when they were rescued. The rescue pilot testified that Kelly, Troy, and the poor dog were kept in some kind of prison-like atmosphere, with the amount of times they dozed off and woke themselves up, screaming in the helicopter. The one person who did not believe them during the debrief was from Russia. She fought Kelly and Troy on every question, attempting to unearth the real story. Alexandra Tarosh, Valentine Tarosh's niece, didn't believe her uncle would have gone insane and started massacring his team of scientists for something as trivial as stuffing toxic waste into the ice of the Antarctic. I am not sure what you're hiding, Alexandra said in a thick Russian accent when she confronted them in the hallway of the government building. Troy had naturally pushed himself between the two women, protecting Kelly from whatever was happening. Kelly rolled her eyes, but allowed him to move in front of her. Oh great, there's another Tarosh, Troy said. You gonna shoot us too? You're hiding something, Mr. Darrow, you and Miss Sawyer. It's actually Dr. Sawyer, Troy corrected her, flashing a proud grin. Kelly scowled at him under her blushing cheeks. Alexandra stared at Kelly, then back to Troy with the same dark gleam in her eyes that her uncle had. Alexandra's lips formed a pucker as if she tasted something sour and unpleasant as she scanned Troy with obvious disappointment. Troy looked over at Kelly, who looked back at him. Troy didn't care this Alexandra was a woman. If she tried anything, he was going to sock her one. Did you know what he was doing there? Kelly asked. Troy shushed her. Alexandra's eyes narrowed at the square-jawed geologist. She, in fact, did not know exactly what her uncle was really doing in the Antarctic, but she knew it wasn't anything related to storage sites. She knew that's what he had said, but she also knew that he had found something there. Her father, Alexander Tarosh, Valentine's brother, had died when she was younger. She never knew her mother. She was brought to her uncle's home as a frightened little girl, and he had raised her like his own. He was the closest thing she had to a father. And now he was gone, with some ridiculous explanation. Alexandra had fought for an investigation, but the EPA and DOE both denied her. No one was jumping at the chance to fly back to the coldest place on Earth to look for a bunch of corpses. But Alexandra Tarosh was not one to take "niet" for an answer. And she wasn't about to listen this time either. When she heard her uncle died along with Zalman and the others, she knew something was wrong. These men were solid stock. They were not weak, they were not cowards, and they certainly weren't crazy. She did not believe her uncle would have lost his mind after being exposed to any radiation, as she was positive he was also not an idiot. So then, what happened there? What was he talking about in the last radio transmission she got from him over a year ago? The message had been garbled from static and interference. She had tried to clean up the sound, but to no avail. She would listen to it on a loop, trying to understand what Tarosh was telling her. When she heard about the two people surviving some incident there, Alexandra assumed it was her uncle and Zalman or Dmitry Proskov, but it wasn't. Her people were dead. And suddenly, these two are saved with their half-breed dog, with some outrageous tale about Tarosh blowing up his research team or gunning them down in a mental breakdown. Everyone else is dead from her uncle's so-called massacre, takeover of Deep Core Station. A bunch of scientist nerds flipped out and went bananas. Alexandra did not believe it. Neither did her superiors. I will find out even if it kills me. Alexandra Taroche sneered at them. Troy bitterly laughed. It's funny that you say that. Troy, you're not helping, Kelly scolded. Taroche, this one, not the dead one, gave them one last look of disdain and stomped away. Troy gave Kelly a worried look as he rushed them out of the government building. Troy and Kelly had no idea Taroche had contacted anyone outside of the EPA when he told them the false story that Kelly had an accident and had died. It was clear his niece didn't know exactly what he and the rest of them had found. They hoped it stayed that way. There's no way she knew we found T-Rex, Kelly said. Troy didn't answer right away as they hurried back to their car. Once inside, he remained quiet. His eyes looked right at the road, his mind digesting the information they had just learned. He didn't like anyone knowing what had happened, especially one with the last name of Taroche. Kelly sighed, shook the memory loose from her mind, and curled up with Troy and Wolf, safe in their bed in Southern California. But even so, she couldn't get the truth out of her head. Someone knew more than they should have about what occurred at Deep Core Station. If Alexandra was anything like her uncle, it meant trouble. At one point, Kelly and Troy discussed telling others what occurred in the Antarctic, if people would even believe them about finding the egg, hatching it, and what happened after. There was one thing she knew for sure, and that was there was still a chance that the Tyrannosaur, though floating on a shrinking ice floe, was alive, with a stronger taste of human flesh and moxie than any other animal she had ever studied. Kelly pulled the quilt up closer to her face. Troy instinctively reached out in his sleep for her. She took his hand and settled back down from the other incoming night terrors. Kelly had a bad feeling it would not be the last they heard the Tyrannosaur's deafening roar or the chaos and destruction from someone whose name was Taroche. And that is the end of Chapter 1! Carnivore, the fan fiction thing that I wrote. This is Carnivore 2.0 shit. Chapter 2, Extremophile Rex. Extremophile Rex. Kelly didn't know why she didn't think of it before. At breakfast, she felt drained emotionally and physically, like she was wrung out like dirty washcloth. As Troy made coffee, she closed her eyes, letting her mind wander back deeper into what happened in Antarctica. The rapid growth and vicious hunger, how the T-Rex grew and acted, was weighing more on her mind. The last time they had seen the great beast, he was floating away in the cold Antarctic Sea. Troy kept telling her there was no way T-Rex survived in the middle of the ocean on a melting ice floe. But even when he said it, he didn't sound convinced himself. She wasn't sure if this was in their nature, the radiation, or both. Exactly what else did the radiation do to the T-Rex besides increase the speed of the hatching? Were all tyrannosaurs this vicious and cunning? Or was this one different? The T-Rex definitely exhibited signs of intelligence. But how much? And how could he survive in the cold so well, when it was one of the reasons the great beasts of yesteryear were wiped from the earth? Kelly thought about the wildlife in Antarctica. They were mostly all warm-blooded, and most of them were birds. Extremophile, she said out loud. Troy looked up from his coffee mug and looked at her. He smirked. I like the sound of that. How extreme are you looking to go? Kelly ignored him. Impossible. He couldn't be one, Kelly said. Troy sighed and put his mug down. Kelly, it sort of makes sense though, doesn't it? I mean, look how many penguin species thrive in such harsh conditions. Well, I, for one, am not crediting him with anything else. He already has Human Eater and Radioactive Freak Show as titles. Kelly blinked and looked at Troy. So I can't be worried about him? Should I have wished he drowned and died and froze at the bottom of the sea? She said, her voice raising with its volume. I mean, that's what I wish for. You don't care about anyone else's feelings, do you, Darrow? It used to bug the hell out of Troy when Kelly Sawyer would turn viciously defensive and yell at him as if he were a 7-year-old. But now he found it quite endearing. Kel, I know you care about it. Him! Okay, him. Troy corrected himself. But the thing's a damn menace, and I put that horribly lightly. I know that. Her voice dropped to a soft whisper. She looked down, her concentration suddenly on the loose thread of her sleeve. Troy reached across the table and took Kelly's hand. Her cheeks grew warm as their eyes met. Wolf trotted in then, his nails click-clacking on the hardwood floor of the kitchen. He settled down, as he always did, his entire body laying on top of Kelly and Troy's feet under the table. I'm worried about that Alexandra person, Kelly said louder. Troy squeezed her hand. He was also worried about the new Tarosh in their life. He knew better than to count the ice lizard out who could be at the bottom of the ocean for all they know. But the Tyrannosaur had a knack of surviving the impossible and suddenly showing up when they least expected it. Half the time when Troy woke up, sweating and screaming from another horrific nightmare of the memory of Deep Core Station, he could have sworn he heard the roar of the T-Rex above him. The two of them sat in silence, their hands still together, their fingers intertwined, tightly squeezing the other. Kelly and Troy remained that way for a while until the sun had risen higher in the warm California sky. Alexandra played the recording again. The transmission was fuzzy from static and almost beyond recognition. She had done everything she could to clean up the noise. That had her uncle's real reason for aborting his original assignment at Deep Core Station. She had given the cassette tape to her friend Boris and Svetlana. They were hackers and experts at anything to do with recordings and sound. They had cleaned up as much of the fuzzy static that they could. Alexandra trusted these two. They had done some missions together and were good to have on your side. Her old pale blue rotary phone rang shrilly in the small rundown house. The frigid winter wind found its way through every possible space, through the walls of her Moscow home, cold enough to freeze a glass of water if left out. She used the rundown fireplace that had once been an ornate centerpiece, but was now soot-stained and crumbling. The boxes of her uncle's belongings sat on the cold hardwood floor next to the small wooden table she used for eating and a desk. She was mailed all of his personal items from his office at the Department of Energy. Alexandra had packed up what was of value, personal and otherwise, from her uncle's home. There was only one box left that was being sent from Tarosh's lawyer, from a safety deposit box, which was to be sent to his next of kin. She spent weeks poring through all of his old files and notes, but there wasn't anything she could find useful, which would tell her what she had found and what he had found. All she knew was that he sounded excited, but other than his tone, it remained a mystery. Hello? She spoke into the heavy receiver. Privyet, Sasha. Как дела? Hello, as well as you would expect, Lana. I am so sorry, my friend. I do have some good news. We were able to clean up a few words of your uncle's transmission. Perhaps it will make sense to you as it does not for me and Boris. A knock on Alexandra's door just then startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone or anything. She made her way to the door, reaching for the Makarov gun she had hidden under the small entry table. She made her way to the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. She had turned the safety off, holding the muzzle up behind the door at waist height. Alexandra opened the door slowly and peered out. A soft rumble of a delivery truck faded as her foot hit something when she stepped further out of the doorway. Looking down, she saw it was a package with her uncle's lawyer's name. She sighed. Sorry, Svet, I got a delivery. Oh, what is it? Svetlana asked curiously. Alexandra grabbed a box, closing and bolting the door behind her. Clicking the safety back into place, she stuck the Makarov into her Levi's waistband. Alexandra felt her heart beat faster. Tears formed in her already bloodshot eyes as she picked up the box and made her way to the kitchen table. Alexandra grabbed a knife from a drawer and sliced open the sealed package like a nimble warrior. It was the rest of Valentine Tarosh's personal effects. "It's the rest of my uncle's belonging," Alexandra said. After a moment, Svetlana began to tell her what she had found. Alexandra listened while she began rummaging through the box, unwrapping some little items that were near the top. She found a pamphlet from the ballet The Nutcracker that she and her uncle had gone to when she was younger. She recalled the first time watching the beautiful dancers when she heard Svetlana say something. "I'm sorry, please repeat those," Alexandra requested. She wasn't sure she heard it correctly the first time, distracted by the memory and package before her. The words Svetlana told her sounded strange and unlikely, and she wondered if she should just give up, as if it was too garbled to try and salvage the message Tarosh had left for her. "Egg and ice," Svetlana said again. Another person picked up a phone from Svetlana's side. The heavy breathing and indication that it was Boris. He repeated the words his wife said and repeated, "Egg and ice. Does that make sense to you, Sasha?" Boris asked, calling Alexandra by her nickname. Frustrated, she told him no. She had no clue what it meant. Disheartened, Alexandra plopped down in the old rickety chair she had in the kitchen. She mindlessly grabbed another small item from the box as she thanked her friends and finished up the phone call. She felt angry and discouraged. She thought about that Kelly person and that idiot boyfriend she had. Trent was his name? Trey? Whatever it was some stupid American name. She knows they know what happened to her uncle. She knows they know he didn't lose his mind and start a shooting spree in Antarctica. She took some of her uncle's belongings to her bedroom. She knelt down, prying a loose floorboard where she kept her valuables and money, setting the few things she wanted hidden in the space. Eggs and ice? Her uncle wanted her to know about an egg? In the middle of the frozen Antarctic? Like a penguin egg? It didn't make any sense. Her uncle wasn't interested in wildlife, so she knew he wouldn't be talking about that, what she presumed would be a penguin egg. She knew he was not telling her about his breakfast. What did he mean about an egg and ice? The mystery frustrated her, making Alexandra more determined to figure out what her uncle was trying to tell her and how that Kelly woman and that Trevor guy, or whatever his name was up to. Alexandra had wanted to see the carnage herself. Most importantly, she demanded her uncle's remains so she could give him a proper burial that he deserved. Instead, she was fed some garbage that the site was too destroyed, and she was sure they weren't in a hurry to retrieve the remains of people, since all of them had died, except Kelly Sawyer and Trey Dillo, or whatever his name was. She grabbed the handpiece of the phone, dialing Boris and Svetlana's number. Boris picked up. "Da, Sasha, what do you need?" Boris asked after she greeted him. Her request was not one he was surprised at. "I need small team with the guide for the Bransfield Strait and whatever is left of Deepport Station," Alexandra said. After a few moments of silence, Svetlana got on the phone too. "Are you sure this is what you want to do, Sasha?" Svetlana asked, although she knew it was fruitless to ask as she knew what her friend's answer would be. "We leave as immediate as possible." Boris spoke into the phone. Alexandra tightened her grip on the phone receiver, her fingers turning white around the thick plastic. "Thank you, my friends," Alexandra said, hanging up the phone. Mindlessly, she grabbed something else from the box. She opened her hand, fingers gripped around the smallest of Fabergé eggs. It was about 2 inches and rested in a small velvet box. It had come with a small card written to her from her uncle for her last birthday, the one he never got to come home to, with the gift he never got to give her. She recalled being a child after her father died. Alexandra stopped speaking after his death. She hadn't spoken to anyone since she was told. Relatives had tried to help her, but when they couldn't, they passed her around to other family members. She'd never known to try and get her to speak again. One day, while she hid in the dark corner of her great-grand-aunt's house, a man with a face much like her father's walked in. It had been some time since Alexandra had seen Valentine Taroche. He was dressed in a crisp military uniform, younger, but scary and fierce to a tiny, frightened child. He walked over stiffly to the corner she had curled up in and knelt down. Without saying a word, he reached into his pocket and handed her a beautifully crafted egg that opened to reveal magnificent treasures. Her eyes widened, mesmerized by the sparkling gems and gold. She took it from him with shaking hands. Finally, after months of silence, she said in a low whisper, "Thank you, Uncle." Taroche's stoic face broke out into a smile like he had never experienced before. He adopted her officially not too long after. Alexandra opened the golden egg, revealing yet another egg carved from a single white rock crystal. The surface of the crystal was engraved. The top of it looked like a little golden cap, tiny diamonds encircling the bottom of the cap where it met the white crystal. There was a golden loop on top where a delicate gold chain went through. There was an engraving that revealed a little bird, a nickname Taroche had given her. The bird was a delicate little golden hen with sparkling red ruby eyes. Closer examination of the hen showed a hinge. Opening it, inside were two little pendants. One was in a tiny imperial crown, and the other a tiny ruby pendant. Alexandra placed the pendants around her neck and put the little hen back in its golden little egg. She then went to her small bedroom and pulled out the suitcase she kept under her bed. She stuffed the little egg in a hidden pocket along the lining of her suitcase. Alexandra began to pack her clothes. Next, she tossed in stacks of money in the form of different currencies from various countries. She made sure to grab all of her IDs and passports with her many aliases. Finally, she finished with her other necessities and then topped it with the most important item of all, a fully loaded Makarov. And that is the end of Chapter 2!